Hey guys, Bolt here, and welcome back to part 2 of the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline. So if you can see, real quick, is we did update, well, I don't know if that was moving that way was the right way. But we recently finished up the 13 Nights of Halloween, so all the stuff is getting boxed away, put away. Some stuff is getting thrown away. Um, but yeah, we got the female at the tops. You know, just kind of like a little bit of a bait. Well, they kind of go like this. We got the Super Saiyan 4s. We got Yu-Gi-Oh right here. We got my Doctor Who. And then because we will have the setup for the 31 days of Christmas, which I don't normally do a lot with that one. Jack Skellington's just going to stay there. We got the Five Nights at Freddy's and the Scooby-Doo. And then you can kind of see two of my car collection. A Mystery Machine and a Scooby-Doo film mobile. You can see the mediocre melodies in my plushy Scooby over here. Um, anyways, I'm like trying to get stuff to kind of like put together. I pulled my Jotaro out. That I'm gonna try to figure out. I'm probably gonna put them like alongside my other stuff here. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. Because I think some of this stuff I do need to get rid of. There's no reason to keep it, or at least not keep it here. But anyways, I need to get finished because I gotta go order my dinner and then go talk to some people. All right, so we just finished up talking about in the MCI back in 1985. Now we're moving on to Circus Babies. So Circus Babies, no matter what, takes place after a Find Us a Freddy. Well, it doesn't have to take place after a Freddy's. Circus Babies rentals needs to be taking place after Freddy's is shut down, but with the amount of times Fazbear Entertainment kind of returns, it's kind of like there needs to be a little bit of an opening where William goes and makes this. And this is kind of one where he's already suspicious, like people are already suspicious of him. So, at the end of MCI, William kind of gets an idea that remnant exist, or the idea of it. So he starts exploring, experimenting using the tunnels from Murray's, and he also kind of sets up Circus Babies and the Funtime animatronics to kind of get ready. And they have like, I think it was Count the Ways was the book from the Fazbear Frights series. That literally the Funtimes are programmed to have thousands of ways to kill you. Without suspicion, and they collect remnant. Elizabeth Afton is killed on the first day by Baby being left alone. Not designed. Afton designed her a little too appealing to Elizabeth, being based on her. Her remnant then takes over Baby, changing her eye color from blue to green. I believe after Afton was accused of the MCI, his wife left him. So I believe Mrs. Afton was there for Midnight Motorist. So basically, I think it's kind of like Cece dies, Charlie gets killed, and then later that night, he's still like in the middle of torturing Michael for what he did. But like once they accuse him of what happened with the MCI, she doesn't want nothing to do with him and leaves. That way, all the kids are his, and kind of like there's no one to oppose him. Let's see here. And then also Ballora is based on her. Probably like in the middle of creating this, or in his like, he does have some grief or like connection to her, so he makes Ballora based on her. Because like the two human characters are based on like Elizabeth is for Baby, so it makes sense that the other human character would be for some reason. Um, I also think that Baby is the perfect evidence to debunk um, molten MCI. So the theory where Afton takes the classic animatronics remnant to make and inject the fun times with them, I just believe that the day Circus Babies and Rentals service gave them enough to have the collective remnant from their victims. So basically, what Molten MCI is basically during Five Nights at Freddy's 6, there's a whole bunch of like several things make a whole in a lot of the Candy Cadet stories, and then like it's not used. It's a cut piece of context for Five Nights at Freddy's 6 during the Insanity ending, but the fact that Scott was thinking of it means that there is some truth to it. But Molten Freddy, or like a later on Ennard without the baby, um, in that blueprint says it holds the most remnant of them all and is the most important. Um, while there is some dialogue that really makes you think that this is the MCI, the issue though is just like Circus Babies happens while the animatronics are still intact. He can't just go and like melt them down and make them whole again. So it's kind of like the remnant pieces have to exist, or like the majority of it has to exist without like complete notice. Like yeah, we see the withered happen, but I don't think that's enough context to say that Afton came and took pieces of that to make the Funtime animatronics, or at least like attach them. What I think in what I was saying was that when they get sent out, or like on that day that Circus Babies was open, um, the remnant from their victims does start like yes, the scooper comes, takes the remnant, and majority of it is taken out, but there's probably traces that makes it like a huge like petri dish of remnant from multiple victims. Um, and then I also believe that the day Circus okay, blah blah blah. I think Babies was built on top of the tunnels where the rental bunker is, and possibly where Murray's Manor and Finance 36 took place. So it's kind of like to make it very easy to deal with all these experiments. You'd have the Circus Babies place set up above it, and that way, just at the end of the night, just pull them down, extract it, and that way they can be sent back up afterwards. That way, it's kind of just like it doesn't have to be on base all the time. Moving on to Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in 1987. Fazbear would try to open a new Freddy's with a higher budget and the animatronics based on the toys from the Fnaf 4. During the in-between mini games, you can come across this girl at a playground who has toy animatronics. And I think, yes, this does kind of fit the dream theory, but I think this is just saying there are toys that are different from the main animatronics, and that's kind of why, like, hey, kids are really liking the designs of the toys, let's make animatronics based on those toys. Ralph is a manager again, because he does follow the tragedies. The bodies of the MCI have been removed by Fazbear. Night 1, Five Nights at Freddy's 1, during, like, the whole disclaimer and, like, legal thing Phone Guy has to say, he does kind of like explain that basically if you get stuffed in the suit, they will come in, take your body out, bleach everything of any DNA evidence. That way, like, yes, they know that you died, but they'll do a missing persons report after the fact that that they've cleaned up their act. That way, your death does not get reported underneath them again, to avoid them getting worse of a reputation. So it's very possible that, yes, Fazbear either William went in and like cleaned them out himself when he got the chance, or just Fazbear as a whole was just like, oh, we found the kids, but we can't really exactly have everyone know that we just had them in our animatronics, or we would never return. So they probably took them out, bleached the animatronics, bleached any evidence of them. It also is very possible they did that back in '85 during the first few openings after the MCI. That way they can't be like brought into it. Um, let's see here. After the MCI, Henry I think walked away. So he's already in grief because of Charlie's death, but with the MCI making it that other kids have died, this would also make sense that the Five Nights at Freddy's 6, the first thing afflicted on me, this is not just a lot of people are like, but what if Cece? This is what the first victim of William Afton would be Charlie, which means, yes, the first wound inflicted would be on Henry at this point. So that would make more sense if it was just to kind of get him starting on his journey to descent. It would be based on this. Later contacted, so at the, I think, night 6 of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, they said they would contact the original owner for Fredbear's, and if they already have contact with William, it's might as well contact the founder, who isn't a part of Fazbear at the time, after the DCI. So the first week, Afton goes undercover as a night guard. He quickly learns that the classics are possessed, and the toys are also possessed because they use parts from the animatronics, and those parts have remnant on them. That's why the toys are acting weird. They do technically have remnant on them. It's just not their own. They are possessed, or at least malfunctioning. The Wizards are the classics, by the way. This is a thing that I think a lot of people are getting confused about. I think Five Nights at Freddy's 2's movie isn't going to very nicely tie I'm hoping that it will be like, hey, they are the same in this movie. I'm really hyped for it, and I really hope this is something that they do mention. But in that idea of just like, that means you have two sets of classics that have two different sets of MCI victims. Or are you saying that the Wizards are using the DCI and the ones that we've seen Five Nights at Freddy's 1 are the MCI? Well, I do have some evidence to say that otherwise. So there are in between night scenes in Five Nights at Freddy's 2. That's you using the POV of Freddy. I believe this is 1985, the first few moments as them being possessing the animatronics. This also shows that in a Five Nights at Freddy's 1 style, the puppet was still there. And then I believe also it's kind of just one of those things that phone calls and things like the cutscenes and minigames are the first thoughts while the game itself is developed around it. Because I think Scott once said, he made the phone calls, but he made the gameplay, and he included BB, but BB's now not in the phone calls. That's what I'm kind of saying. It's just the in-between scenes were thought of, but he probably made the classics show up rather than a modified Wizard design. And then the Wizards just look so much cooler than the Five Nights at Freddy's 1, in my personal opinion. It also makes sense how the Remnant transfer from the Wizards to the classics by Five Nights at Freddy's 1. Because it's just if they aren't the same, that means the Wizards are just existent. and then that means the classics have been just sitting around doing nothing. Or like they got reintroduced by after Murray's, which confuses it a lot more. The next week, Jeremy Fitzgerald is hired as a night guard with Afton transferred to the day shift. Sometime during the week, Afton uses the Spring Bonnie suit again to perform the DCI, the Dead Children incident, where he lets them be discovered, closing down the location and gets away with it. In Save Them minigame, we do see Purple Guy William Afton with a badge on him, which means that he's at least a guard of some sorts. And the fact that in the Night 5 and 6 kind of eras, they're kind of like, we don't want him to be a part of it. And it's kind of like, oh, so we're saying that the previous night guard, now the day shift guard is not like looked down upon, at least. Let's see here. And then okay, the last day opened is a scheduled birthday party where Jeremy is bitten by an animatronic on his frontal lobe. This is known as the Bite of 87. A big thing that you don't need to know is who did this, but the theories are that using the Week Before book, we know that Foxy might be it, because this gives him a reason to be out of order, and Ralph does say he never bit a child. Not a person, child. So the only adult in this birthday party, except for maybe some of the parents or some chaperones, is Jeremy. There's of course Toy Chica, that if you use the Ultimate Custom Night lines, she does say that her beak is lodged inside your forehead, which is very like, okay, that's very particular. And then there's Mangle, which I believe is the person who did the Bite of 87. Her their jump scare is from the top down, so Jeremy wouldn't be able to see where Mangle is as it approaches him, and like it lunges very close to the head area in its jump scare. And then the biggest thing that I always have an issue with Foxy, or one of the classics doing it, is there's the newspaper that says that the toys will be scrapped. Why would you scrap expensive animatronics that you put so much money into? They have facial features and all that stuff. Why would you get rid of the better of the two? So it makes more sense that the Mangle would be scrapped because one of the toys did it. So it'd either be Toy Chica or Mangle, and I think it's the Mangle based on the jump scare alone. Not to mention, like, just it makes more sense that Jeremy would not notice the Mangle and have a higher chance of getting bitten that way. Then there's Night 7 with employee number 3, Fritz Smith, which I believe this is Mike. So we do get Afton, Jeremy, and then this Fritz character. Mike is fired on their first day for tampering with the animatronics. And thanks to both the pink slips you get from Five Nights at Freddy's 1 and 2, it looks like they're the same person, Fritz Smith and Mike Schmidt. And it's tampering with animatronics and a bad odor. I think this is Mike. After his torture, he becomes like a puppet for Afton. In Five Nights at Freddy's 6, there's a poster that looks like it's the Aftons getting represented. There's a man, which is William. There is a bear, which it would be Cece based on Fredbear. You have the clown, which would be Circus Baby, which is Elizabeth. And then, of course, there's the look-alike puppet that looks similar to the man, which is William. Which, in Sister Location, he says, "They thought I was you," which means that Mike and William have very similar looks, and he might be the young-looking William. So it's very possible that he's him as a puppet is more just William tortured him, and now that Michael knows how far he can go. He doesn't want to do anything against him. Let's see here. He goes to the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 pizzeria to kind of like get remnant from the toys. This gives reason to why the toys are in pieces by Five Nights at Freddy's 3. It's just like, yes, they're going to be scrapped, but Mike, before they do, takes stuff out of them, and he gets fired for doing so. And then moving on to Five Nights at Freddy's 1. Freddy's would return for a short time, anywhere, let's see, what did I say? Anywhere between 1979 and 2000s. The books and games and like the movies have kind of like complicated what time Five Nights at Freddy's 1 happens. But I don't think you really need to know. All you need to know is that this takes place after all the events and before certain events. Due to this past, however, it closes due to little revenue. We see this in the newspaper clippings that it would close by year's end due to the rumors. The animatronics are also unsanitary, which is another newspaper clipping. Foxy seems to be either out of order due to a malfunction or he's just too scary. In Five Nights at Freddy's 2, they say Foxy's too scary for kids, and like the hook is a very like scary thing to put out with kids in the first place. So I think it's just like they would not keep Pirates Cove if he was the Bite of 87. I think it was just they reopened Freddy's. They made the main four be a part of the pizzeria. But then they kind of noticed that it was a bad idea to bring Foxy into it again, so they closed it down. If my Mangle theory is correct, it would also make sense that like the Fox animatronic would go out of order to not tie back to the Bite of 87. Which if it was the Bite of 79, 89. The Bite of 89. I don't know why I said 79. Probably because of Secret of the Mimic. But it's either been 2 years or 11 years. And no matter what, the Bite of 87 is not going to go away. It's going to be something that someone was so young and they can remember, and the adults of the area would stay away from Freddy's for that reason. So even if it was 11 years, the Bite of 87 would be such an attachment. So the fact that the Fox animatronic would come back, they would want to get rid of it. Some point in this like time frame, Ralph, a week before the events of the game, Five Nights at Freddy's 1, he learns he's about to leave or like retire from Freddy's, and he becomes the night guard, but he sadly gets put in a suit. He gets stuffed in a suit. I believe this is also the game over screen we see whenever we die. I think this is to show that this is Phone Guy. We also see sadly didn't get released, and I really wish it did, but Fiznom's Five Nights at Freddy's Plus, they show the Phone Guy being a kid. A paranormal investigator runs into the back rooms and finds the body of Phone Guy in the Freddy's animatronic. I think that's kind of what it's supposed to represent. Sometime after closing, Mike is hired as Mike Schmidt to try and do what he did with the toys, but I think he's caught and fired before he can do what he did with the toys and what William sought him to go do. This leaves William to have to do it himself. In turn, he sends Mike to Babies while he goes to try to get remnant from them. He dismantles the classics by luring by hiding in the safety of the safe room. This is what did I say? This is shown in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, the Follow Me segment. The classics are lured away to the safe room by Shadow Freddy. So I think it's just this. If this was a previous employee who was spring locked during Fredbear's, I think he was probably saying, "Hey, this guy's in there. You need to get him." I don't think he worked with him unless like he had some attachment similar to Elizabeth with him, where it was a very toxic. I want to provide a service to him. Um, um, he dismantles all the classics. The spirits corner him, and he didn't take into consideration what the springlock suit of Spring Bonnie would be like, because there's the state of the building, which shows that it's been some time after Five Nights at Freddy's 1's building has been closed, because there's cobwebs, there's mice, there's a bunch of water seeping through. And if you remember back when I was explaining the Great Bite, moisture and like movement can break it. So the fact that it's been very moist, there's a lot of moisture in the air from the building being decrepit, which sets off the spring locks, killing William in the Spring Bonnie suit. And then this kind of leaves him for the 30 years from the end of when Freddy's is getting shut down, to 30 years in the future, to where he's picked up and put in Fazbear Frights. Moving on to Sister Location, I believe, so after failing to get Remnant from Five Nights at Freddy's 1, Mike is sent over to Sister Location while William is killed by Springlocks. And I think this is where he follows his father's orders, finds the rental business ran by Afton Robotics. I think he still has stake in Fazbear's, but I think it's one of those things with Papa John's where it's just like you can't associate with such a bad person. So he goes and makes Afton Robotics to try to make it on his own. Throughout the week, he understands what his dad has done. So at this point, yes, he's like what do they call Vanny? A follower who kind of is like scared to do anything, but still does what they're supposed to do. But as he learns about the remnant experiments, the kids that have passed away based on his father's doing, I think this makes Mike want to switch up the team. He tries to free the Fun Times and their remnant. He gets fooled by their by this suit. Basically, especially Circus Baby, is like, oh, we're poor souls locked away in these suits. Please free us. But the thing is, these are programmed killers. So they're going to be like, hey, come into the room. Please, I need a friend. And they combined into Innard, using... they lure him into the scooper room, which the scooper is basically just like an arm with a giant metal like shovel-like thing that goes in, collects some remnant, and sometimes it leaves remaining remnant for like the animatronics and now Mike to come back with the remnant with sentience. The Innard takes his being like a suit and walks it around, but it is a corpse, so it does start rotting, and people start noticing, which then Innard has to retreat into the sewer system while Mike starts to live his life in the shadows. He does learn of so he does, with the knowledge of what he learned at Sister Location, he wants to do something against his father, and I think also this is where he would learn of the new attraction, Fazbear Frights. Let's see here. A thing that I will say, so 30 years after Freddy's is closed, Fazbear Fright is set up in an amusement park that is a haunted house attraction. I have to stress the amusement park thing because a lot of people are like, oh, it's another Freddy's, and like Freddy Fazbear is trying to use it as a cover up. It's possible. The fact that they do not an audit. They sell the remainder stuff at the end of the game out. So the fact that they're like Five Nights at Freddy's 6 exists, and so Fazbear would hold on to their property the best they can, and then here Fazbear Frights is just selling off property. Makes no sense. Mike, he takes a week or more. I think it's just a week though that he's working as a night guard for Fazbear Frights. But he on his second week runs into the spring Bonnie that's been made a spring trap for Afton. At the end of the week, Mike puts a fire to kind of get rid of all the remnant. That way all the kids can be moving on, and then Springtrap is done for. But it fails. The puppet returns as the pieces of the classics and the toys are there. So DCI didn't take over anybody, but the MCI remnant is both in the classics and the toys. So with Fazbear Frights taking those pieces and putting them in one building, the puppet is like, oh, I'm going to come over here. Like, this is kind of where everything ended up going. Let's see here. So the puppet returns the pieces. That way they're complete. The puppet goes to face 4 of the 5 spirits, while the 5th child, Cassidy, works with CC in Five Nights at Freddy's world. This makes a happiest day for them. This is a previous theory of mine. So basically, the puppet comes to Fazbear Frights, sees that the MCI victims are here, and with Mike getting ready to do the fire, to kind of melt the remnant away and free them from the parts of the classics and toys, the puppet tries to set up a happiest day so that they can move on. So Gabriel Freddy, Jeremy Bonnie, Susie Chica, and Fritz Foxy are his main concerns. That way he can collect at least most of them, while Cassidy is on a similar wavelength to the Charlie in terms of how like strong and well like they have more motives to save the others, but still stick around for Afton. And she goes and connects with Cece again. And through Five Nights at Freddy's world, we see the minigames that we see in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. I think this is Cece in a world to kind of disassociate. Like, oh, all my friends are running around and having fun. But it's kind of like Cassidy coming in and being like, hey, this isn't real, and I kind of need you to move on. So while, yes, Cassidy is pissed at William, he wants CC to move on. That way, yes, she's not going to hold people back, but she will definitely stick around to torture Afton. Let's see. In the Fazbear Frights books, we do get to see in the Stitch Wraith stories that objects that contain remnant, if someone comes in contact with it, they can kind of see a memory that made them have the agony in the first place. So, say with CC, which is my theory from prior, his birthday was ruined by Mike and the bullies picking him up and putting him in the Fredbear things to close. Well, in the Stitch Wraith story, there is Count the Ways again. Millie gets killed by Funtime Freddy, and her remnant sticks around in the pit, into the pit. And Stitch Wraith touches it, sees the memory, and changes it so that Millie can move on, or at least have a good memory to be on, where instead of dying to Freddy, she's able to escape and join her family for Christmas. And I think that's what the whole purpose of Happiest Day is for, is just like, all right, on top of having the four move on from the MCI, we're also going to have CC actually celebrate their birthday. And like I said in my previous theory, is that all those kids with masks are the people that we see in Five Nights at Freddy's 4. And they're just there to be, because they're apparently invited to this party, even though they're mean to him. So it looks like, these people are there to just kind of be a part of the party as the four MCI victims, which are also the four people with masks that, well, they're the four characters that pushed them into the bite in the first place. So it's kind of like, even though they're the MCI victims, they're also working as the... Oh, am I close? Okay. I'm very close to being done. Try to stretch. What am I thinking? They're the bullies. That way it's kind of like, we're sorry for doing what we did. Here's your birthday party. That way Cece can have a full-on good memory for the party and move on. And I think that the good ending is canon. I think the 4 out of 5 MCI victims have moved on. I think Cece has moved on. Reason why I'm thinking Cassidy's... Well, to explain it is that I think Cassidy moves on away from Golden Freddy or Fredbear after Five Nights at Freddy's 3. That way, she's a wandering remnant being or agony being. That way she can do more. And that way she isn't attached to that suit anymore. Let's see. Charlie and Cassidy make a party with him to actually celebrate it. This gives the CC his birthday. 4 out of 5 of the MCI and CC are moving on. However, Charlie and Cassidy stay back behind to deal with Afton because he didn't die in the fire. And this sets up Five Nights at Freddy's 6 Pizza Sim. Henry finally comes out of retirement, making a new Freddy's program to lure Afton, Charlie, Elizabeth, and the Fun Times to finish it. Mike returns as well as the manager following paragraph 4. On Saturday, Charlie burns it all down, including him, Mike, Charlie, Henry, including him and Mike. And then Charlie, Henry, Mike, Elizabeth are able to pass on, while Cassidy, who is still a part of the situation, sticks around to torture Afton in Ultimate Custom Night. So, while I believe the others are able to move on, Cassidy and Afton are still sticking around. And I think that is something that will happen at the end of this franchise. Henry's plan does not work on the Fun Times, however. So, even though theoretically Heat is supposed to get neutralized Remnant, I think the Fun Times aren't Remnant. I think they're agony beings. So I think, yes, Remnant worked on the people who were controlled by Remnant, so most of the human characters, but this massive collection of random pieces of Remnant, I think that's why Molten Freddy was able to survive. It was just yes, you got rid of my Remnant maybe, but I still have my agony. Moving on to Help Wanted and Special Delivery. Fazbear would start up to rebrand under new management, using a VR game to kind of gain back trust, using Canon Scott to basically, hey, make Five Nights at Freddy's, and then we'll basically say, oh, that's totally not true. You're just some random person that doesn't matter. So all the games that were based on our franchise mean nothing. Yes, the events happened, but they were blown out of proportion, or this is defaming. That way, they discredit the in-universe games and the in a lot of the. They cool down what the incidents meant. Um, though animatronic rent, so as they were rebranded, they needed to get stuff that isn't just a pizzeria. They went used the rental system that Afton made and just kind of like sent out all the animatronics we see in special delivery. This and merchandise allow Fazbear to regain money so that they can make the mall we see in Security Breach. Um, oh yeah, and then of course we also see the Glam Rocks, and this is built over top of Finance Freddy 6, which I also believe is Circus Baby's pizzeria. Before moving on, someone at the game company noticed that there is a glitch-like being. So when making the VR game, we call her Tape Girl or Cassette. Oh no, Cassette Man is Henry. Tape Girl is from Help Wanted, and she kind of explains what happened with um, Glitch Trap, and a coworker named Jeremy slices his face off to get rid of the Vanny with an eye mask. Um, and the employee Tape Girl, who we tried to, she tries to disassemble the virus. So she takes notice that she makes some logs in the VR game, and Glitch Trap locks itself to that. And to kind of avoid it doing anything else to anybody else, she separates it and sends it across the game. That way, people have to go through effort to put it together. That way, Glitch Trap doesn't have immediate access to people again. But sadly, a beta tester, Vanessa, gets a hold of it and it puts the tapes all together to make Glitch Trap again. At the end, Glitch Traps takes over the body and kind of forces her consciousness into the background. She's still there. She can do a lot of subconscious stuff, but this Glitch Trap has taken over a primary of her objectives. Moving on to Security Breach. Sometime before Security Breach, a kid named Gregory would also come in contact with a glitch being and also get his consciousness pushed back. Him and Vanessa would go to the same counselors, and if anyone kind of got close to the being's motives, they'd kill them. Vanessa would be an Afton of sorts, while Gregory, GGY, would be a hacker into the systems. That way, the glitch-like being could kind of reach their goals with the new mall. Let's see here. Oh, and then basically he would use the bots as like extra things for them to deal with. Though sometime before Security Breach, like really right before it, Gregory regains himself, which we don't fully know or understand how he broke the glitch trap virus. But sometime or someone resets him. Okay. Oh no, someone resets or let's see here. Though sometime before Security Breach, Gregory is freed, and sometime or something or someone resets Glamrock Freddy to his original personality. So in what was it? Very Important Pig VIP. We learned that Glamrock Freddy isn't the greatest before Security Breach. He's very similar in he's a very egotistical person, and he wants to steal the spotlight, including with kids. And that's, I think, what we're seeing a race happen in the very introduction of the game. At the end of the night, Cassidy returns to free Vanessa from the mind games through the Princess Quest games. In the files, we see Vanessa Cassidy is in the game, so I believe this is what it's supposed to be saying, is that yes, Cassidy is still existent, is trying to deal with what leftover things Fazbear has left for the world, and she's using the games to kind of like interact with the glitch-like being and remove it. At the end of the night, yeah, Cassidy gets rid of Vanessa. Oh, the mall would be destroyed and ruined, and people would like bring up the bulldozers and the wrecking ball to demolish the mall. Moving on to Help Wanted, a tech would discover Finance 36 buried underneath the mall and discover being the being their fate is unknown. Oh, so okay. So this tech finds Finance 36 around here. Molten Freddy slash they called it the Blob, but I think it's known as the Tangle now. The Tangle in Finance Freddy's World Halloween update, or I think it's also in Finance Freddy's World as it is. There's a mangled discolor that's like green, and that's known as the Tangle. But so the Tangle's over here sitting around. The tech finds Finance 36, and he comes across Glitch Trap. But in the ending scene that connects it to Ruin, it looks like Staffbots sees the tech and make him into Maskbot, who starts the game of Ruin. We do find a Bonnie mask, which connects him to what we call Bonnie Bro, who is one of the bullies that is the friends of Mike back from the Great Bite in 1983. In Ruin, we meet a girl named Cassie, who is called by Gregory, who is their friend, to help them escape the mall. She is given Vanny VANNI mask, which is kind of like a tech expert's mask, to help people kind of find stuff. And she's given it to the Maskbot by the Maskbot, who we really think is the tech from Help Wanted 2. Let's see here. So she travels through the mall. She finds a cavern. Okay, so as she's exploring and trying to get to Gregory, she comes across the ruined animatronics. She also runs across programs like the Helpy with an eye and Mexes. So, thing that's funny is that in the original way with like Supernatural, the spirits would be restricted to what the robots did. And I think even a program such as the Mimic, which I believe is infecting the Glamrocks, would be overdone by something as strong as like Roxy was able to overlook what happened and actually care for Roxy. Not Roxy, Cassie. And then Mex's is what we see in Secure to the Mimic, and is kind of like a cradle program / kind of like holding Mimic there. And she finally finds out where Gregory is supposedly, and what should we call it? She turns off Mexus, that way Mexus can't hold the Mimic anymore. She frees Gregory, and it turns out to be M2 in the Mimic endoskeleton that looks to have been damaged multiple times and rebuilt. I think we're dealing with the Tails situation where I think they do discover the mimic, and the mall staff use him to get task done, but eventually he goes to do his killing streak, but uh, you know force someone eventually forces him to be locked away, but his virus still infects the staff box, the endoskeletons, the animatronics, and he slowly, in the Tails, he kills off the CEO of Fazbear, so he can have complete, unstopped power. And a situation we see is that in the cafeteria coming off of the kitchen area in Security Breach, it looks like there was been a scuffle where there was a giant employee meeting that it looks like these staff bots were told to kill the remaining employees at that time. And the mimic over here just kind of like communicating through waves. And anyways, he tries to hunt down Cassie as they are going deeper. I think we're in the area where we use the spring lock captain suit that goes up to the recording puppet show. Let's see here. And then she gets into the elevator, and it's not very possible, but Gregory comes over and says, "I'm sorry that you were tricked, but you cannot leave with that thing following you," and drops her. Based on some dialogue, Gregory is trying to contact her. There's a chance that there's a staff bot that falls in front of you while you're trying to squeeze between things, and it has Gregory try to contact you as a rare happening. And I think the mimic is blocking out Gregory from contacting Cassie, which is very possible at the end as well. That instead of Gregory actually contacting her, I think maybe Gregory came in for a very short amount of time, but the mimic again jumps on. That way Gregory knows that Cassie is at Freddy's at the mall. Also, with some of the lines we get through Cassie, it's hinting that the tech from Help Wanted 2, Bonnie Bro, is her dad. And then again, using some notes we see around Security Breach, it looks like Lewis, who is... So back in Special Delivery, I think it was released, but Lewis is kind of your... so Vanessa was a part of a 9 to 5 office job where she would do computer stuff, and Lewis would notice some of her work searches and be like, "Hey, why are you looking up possessions and these torture devices? As your friend, I'm not going to report them, but you do get red flagged." And the biggest thing to take out of that is red flag. In Security Breach, you can find a note that is labeled red flag, and it goes along with this story that's very backgroundish, where it looks like someone else is trying to free Vanessa through the Princess Quest games. But unlike Gregory, he isn't able to find Princess Quest 3. Or at least he doesn't get the thing. So it's kind of weird that, yes, Lewis would be... I think either he's in love or has a very strong loyalty to Vanessa, and once he knows that something's going on, he starts seeing Princess Quest as a part of it. He is trying to do something, and as someone who's trying to figure out what happened to Vanessa, he would discover Five Nights at Freddy's 6, and because he's already dealt with Princess Quest before, him entering Princess Quest 4 makes sense. And this would mean Lewis, Bonnie Bro, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Tech, and Cassie's dad being the same person makes so much sense. Um, but this also means that this is a legacy character that may have just died within a very short amount of time. I mean, if he's still in Maskbot, he could kind of be freed in the next game or two. Let's see here. Oh, and that's it. So far it's literally Murray. So Murray Senior makes the manor. He sets it up to where it can be a thriving business if it's just a steady, do what you're supposed to business. While I believe Afton's Afton's family made Fredbear's Family Diner. They associated with one another to make Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. Henry Murray Sr. and the family of Afton give it to William Afton and Edwin Murray. When Murray Sr. passes away, Edwin has been married. Henry has teamed up with them to make Chica's Party World. But seeing as it's a similar entertainment kind of business, William and Henry come together to talk to Edwin about making the Fazbear project, which is the first Freddy Fazbear's. And eventually, like, with Edwin and Fiona being good for one another, the business thrives. Yes, there are still some bad things done, but for the most part, Fiona keeps Edwin in check on most things. David would be born 1970, and of course, through the birthdays, Edwin would get further away, especially with Fiona gone. He would die in 1975, which I believe Fiona and David would go on to possess things, with David possessing the White Tiger, but Fiona, I think, because she was so close to the inventions of Edwin, it would make sense for her to be M1. And of course, with the proto-mimics, it sounds like he couldn't catch that lightning in a bottle like M1, and he makes M2 to make up for David, but because it's not the same, and I think there is Remnant dealing with Fiona, I think that's the difference. But because Edwin would finally catch up with his emotions, he would throw Fiona into F10, the supercomputer that goes on to become Mex's. David just kind of wanders about. And then the Mimic kind of goes on a rampage after he hurts him out of grief. A thing that I did forget to mention in my part 1 is Moon. Sleepy Moon is, I think it is someone who died or has gone crazy. So someone who's gone crazy, wandering the streets, looking for anything, and as soon as they see something, attacks them. But I think it is someone died in the Sleeping Moon suit. The Mimic follows you down there, and in the Tales books, someone is in a costume, and the Mimic goes into that costume with that body in it still. And I think that's what Sleeping Moon is supposed to be. But after, David and Fiona's death, Fazbear would see an opportunity to kind of like buy them out, get all the property, have Edwin as in their back pocket, and eventually build up to where it is now. But with Edwin being killed by the Mimic by M2, they go in to try to get the Mimic design. I think they eventually get it and get all the property and kind of figure out what to do from there. William takes over the properties. They set up Freddy's. They do good for a few years. Then Cece dies. This puts William in a emotional state. Kills Charlie. With both founders in grief, Cece's bite shuts down Fredbear's, Henry's already in hurting, but once the MCI happens, Henry walks away. 1985 is the end of Freddy's. They reset it though with Finest Freddy's 2's Pizzeria in 1987. William comes back, does the DCI. This gets it closed down within 2 weeks. And Jeremy's bitten on 19 as the Bite of 87 by Mangle. Trying to think. The toys are technically possessed by the parts of the MCI remnant because they were given some parts to replace for the toys. And I think Mike came in as a puppet after Cece's death. William throws him in to get tortured, and he becomes a puppet. He comes in, tries to take he takes whatever amount he can get from the toys. I think, and then of course after the 1985, William kind of understands about Remnant, makes Circus Babies, but because of Elizabeth's death, he stops that, gives it some time before making it a rental service. But he's on to Remnant at this point. But after Finance Freddy's 2, it takes a few years before Freddy's can try again with Finance Freddy's 1, but because it has such a bad stuff with the bite, Charlie's death, and MCI, it doesn't do well, and the revenue isn't enough to keep it afloat, and it goes it dies again. Mike is sent to try to get Remnant, but fails due to getting caught and fired. William has to come in while he gets sent to Babies. We see that he gets Mike gets tricked, gets his body used as a suit before becoming returned to life by a Remnant, while William goes back to Finance Freddy's 1, dismantles all the animatronics, but does get cornered by the spirits, forced into the suit, and dies at Springtrap. 30-something, closer to 30 years, because after Freddy's, I think it's been a few years since for it to be as bad as it did. But definitely, it's been 30 years since Freddy's has closed. When Fazbear Frights comes upon, Mike shows up, tries to free all the spirits, get rid of Springtrap in the end. Charlie and Cassidy, the vengeful spirit that's the 5th MCI victim, goes on to make a party to free CC and the other 4 MCI victims. They know that Springtrap is still alive, so they stick around. In Final Freddy's 6, Henry returns. Mike comes to play as the management. They work with Paragraph 4 to basically try to get rid of all the Remnant. William does not pass on. He gets caught in a web by Cassidy to get tortured in Ultimate Custom Night. Henry, Mike, Elizabeth, and Charlie move on. But the Tangle sticks around because it has Agony and probably a lot more Remnant, so it gets failed to move on. Fazbear needs to get bought out and rebranded by a new company. They try to distance themselves from the past of the original company by making a Canon Scott make the games to do a cover-up and basically say, all of this stuff happened, but not as bad as it was, and it's been a year. Please trust us again. The VR is perfect for M2 to implement a virus that sets up the ability to hack someone's mind, as it were. And he does this to Jeremy. Jeremy frees himself through slicing his face off with with the mask. Tape Girl finds the glitch entity. It has attached itself to their audio logs, separates the logs so they can't be together. But Vanessa comes in, puts the logs together, gets taken over. When the VR becomes public, Gregory gets taken over as well. And Vanessa works as an Afton by taking kids and killing them, while Gregory, or GGY, goes around hacking systems, making the whole mall get infiltrated by M2. M2 kills the manager, kills the employees, and runs it only on like robots. That way he has full control over everything. And then Gregory over here trying to deal with it. Glamrock Freddy is either rebooted by what I believe is he's either rebooted by Cassidy or by the remnant of Fiona, which would make sense because they're two clashing forces, and it would be AI versus supernatural again. He's freed by the control of M2. He goes on to help Gregory. Gregory's able to play the Princess Quest to free Vanessa, and then Help Wanted 2. After the place is ruined, a tech goes down there. We find out that it's Bonnie Bro. He kind of runs into Glitch Trap, gets taken over. Well, I think he doesn't get taken over. I think he gets forced or killed and gets put into Maskbot. Then come ruin, Cassie, the daughter of the Help Wanted 2 tech, which is also Lewis from Special Delivery. And they kind of move on from there. As Cassie goes around trying to get through the building, M2 does try to lure her in, but Mexes is trying to avoid them from continuing because they know they're going for the Mimic. They associate with a mask, and then at the end, she frees the Mimic, shuts down Mexes, and only people who can probably save Cassie in the next proper sequel game is Roxy, Freddy, Gregory, and Vanessa. And we might see Fiona, David, and Cassie, which I believe are the only classic spirits that remain. I think the spirits of Vanessa's victims, or Vanny victims, are a part of the Tangle as well. So I think as it got bigger and consumed metal, it also gained a lot more remnant through the victims. But so far, that's my theory, my working theory. I think that's a good story. Yes, there's a few things that could be polished and we don't know straight answer. But I think it's we need to move on with a lot of these facts. And we definitely need to put some people to rest. I really like the idea of 4 out of 5 victims and CC moving on after Five Nights at Freddy's 3. That way, it's only wrapping up little pieces, plus some of the main characters that are just involved with Afton in the first place. But anyways, I gotta go upload this, order some food, and then I saw a text. So I'm gonna go see what that's all about. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.